What's going on, everybody? College football week 12. We're back. As always, Daily Bread Media, JD Yonke here with my co-host Kevin Mount. We're going to break down every single game, every single relevant player on the main slate, giving you the best free college football DFS information in the entire universe. Not sure if there's someone on Neptune doing it better, but no one on Earth I'm aware of. Kevin, how's your week going?
Good, man. I can't believe we're at week 12 already. This season's flying by, so we need to hit them right this week. It's a weird slate. I have a very small player pool.
Yeah, it's already coming to a close. We have 2 more weeks of the regular season. Then we have conference championship week, which is usually a full DFS slate for that as well. And then bowl season, which is kind of a total mess because players are sitting out. So there's really 2 real good ones, 1 decent one, and bowls. Of course, we're going to be playing the bowls. But yeah, we should be going through conference championship weekend. So we have 3 more counting this week. So kind of bummed out. We're really excited to get into it. As always, there is a full slate here this week. The first game up is TCU going against Baylor. 2.5-point favorite. TCU is 8-1-1 against the spread. Still haven't been able to get much respect despite that being the case. As only a 2.5-point favorite under a field goal. I will remind you, they were 7.5-point underdogs last week to Texas. We saw what happened in that game. Okay. I don't know why, it's TCU is the name and then Texas is the name. I guess that's as simple as it gets. But anyway, they're going on the road to hit Waco to face Baylor. This is a rivalry. These 2 teams hate each other. Should be a very fun game. Baylor, of course, is coming off an absolutely terrible game against Kansas State. They lost 31-3. And then TCU, of course, is coming off that big upset win over Texas. So letdown spot for TCU, bounce back spot for Baylor. Other than that, over-unders at 57.5. TCU 8th in the country in scoring, over 40 points per game. So, Kevin, where are we looking at for the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, I think the good thing with TCU is it's pretty concentrated where they get their fantasy points from, right? So it's Dugan at quarterback, it's Kendre Miller, and it's Quentin Johnson at receiver. So really, I think all 3 are good plays. You're not going to play any of the peripheral wide receivers, which we never do. I think Kendre Miller is going to have a pretty big game. He every week the guy just performs, and last week he played a really, really stout Texas run D. He still broke a long one, still had a really good game. That's what he does. Baylor is not nearly as good as they usually are against the run. So probably my favorite play on the Horned Frogs is probably Kendre Miller. I think his price is pretty good. So I'll definitely have some action on Kendre and probably a little on Quentin Johnson, but more on Kendre.
Yeah, Quentin Johnson's been dealing with that ankle injury for a while. I mean, he played through it and still caught a touchdown last week, but it obviously isn't what you'd like to see. And then Duggan's playing hobbled as well. Didn't really look full strength to me last week. There's been some chatter about what exactly his injury is or how severe it is. But anytime you have negative 41 rushing yards, okay, and in your last 3 weeks, you have, 30 mental math. Okay. 41 plus 8, you have what? Negative 33 rushing yards in your last 3 weeks. That's not really going to get the juices flowing for me. So personally, not a huge fan of that. I could see this one blowing up because it's a TCU game, of course. I think Baylor's defense is very overrated. They're 7-3 to the over this season. They're overrated because Dave Aranda is a great coach and he's a great defensive-minded coach. But anytime you lose 6 NFL draft picks at a program like Baylor where you develop teams more. I've talked about a lot with Utah. They're a developmental program. That means they can't just reload. So it should mean they're getting stronger as the year goes on, but I don't know. They haven't looked very strong lately. I agree with you, Kendre Miller. They refuse to price this guy what he should be. He hasn't been above 7K since early in the year against SMU, and he is an absolute monster. He's one of the best backs in the country. One thing I will note is that he relies a lot on the explosive rushes. He finds one every game. He won the game last week when he found that explosive rush, but Texas is actually really good at that. They're 11th in the country in rushing explosiveness. So he hasn't been bottled up all season. Could he? Baylor's defense isn't great, but that's at least the strength of their team is in stopping explosive rushes. All right, looking at the flip side, Baylor going against a TCU defense that we're not very high on, but I'll tell you what, I am very high on their defensive coordinator, Joe Gillespie. He really just draws up some very good game plans, and they were fantastic. Texas didn't score an offensive touchdown last week. That being said, Baylor is extremely cheap, and their offense doesn't suck. So what are we thinking here, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm struggling. Even though they are cheap, I'm struggling to get to any Baylor guys. They're kind of a bit of a mess right now. Dick Reese we liked, and then the past couple weeks he's been hurt and just not doing what he was doing before. So I don't really play Baylor wide receivers, and I don't think Shapen is very good fantasy wise. So even though they're cheap, I'm struggling to put any of those guys in my lineup. So I probably won't have any Baylor exposure.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I mean, the running back room's been super confusing, right? It was Richard Reese for a while, and now it's no longer Richard Reese. It was Squirrel Williams for 1 week. Then he had 4 carries against Kansas State. I don't know how much we can gain from that Kansas State game because they fell in a hole early. The one thing I gained from it is that Richard Reese is leading the backfield again, right? Had 9 carries compared to Squirrel's 4. That being said, I think it could be a little bit more of a committee than it has been. TCU's defense isn't great, but again, they have a good defensive coordinator. I think their weakness is against the rush, 82nd in rushing explosiveness, 74th in PPA, and that's really what Baylor wants to do, right? So I could see either one of them being a fine play. Other than that, I mean, TCU gives up a ton of explosive plays, and Baylor's not explosive at all. We know Monterey Baldwin is perhaps in tournaments, but very, very risky. All right, on the flip side, we have Indiana facing Michigan State. This is an ugly one. Should be a pretty short one here for us. Michigan State's a 10.5-point favorite, and over-under's only at 47.5. Kevin, any thoughts on Indiana?
I won't have any Indiana players. They're just nobody does anything, so it's pretty easy skip for me.
They're a terrible football team. I mean, Michigan State is 122nd in passing PPA, 124th in passing success rate. That's usually a team we want to fade, but Indiana is so bad, and their coach is going to get fired. All right, on the flip side, Michigan State is facing an Indiana team that is also terrible in the secondary, 125th in passing success rate. That is mighty interesting. Michigan State, bad team, but great matchup at home. What are we thinking, Kevin?
It is a really good matchup, so I think you'd be you wouldn't be bad to throw Jaden Reed or Coleman out there. I like Jaden Reed a little better. I think Jaden Reed's 56 and Coleman's 55. I think just Jalen Reed, he's just more consistent. Jaden Reed, I think he's still their number one. So I like him a little more. I think his price is really good. I think there is going to be some wind there though, so that is a little concerning. Let me see. I think it was about
21 degrees, 17.5 mile an hour wind.
Yeah,
so that's pretty damn ugly.
So it's not the best weather forecast. That said, I still think he could do some damage at 56. So against that Indiana team, I think Jaden Reed is a decent tournament play.
Yeah, it's tough for me because the running back pricing, I think we really like some of the targets this week. The quarterbacks, I mean, there's some good options. I don't know if the pricing's it's definitely not as bad as it was earlier in the season. So that makes wide receiver kind of a toss-up this week. And yeah, Jaden Reed's one of those guys. He's in a price range where I don't really like anybody. Same as that thing for Keon Coleman. These guys have been very similar to each other. I think they're both very good. I think they're the clear-cut top 2 options in a great matchup. The weather stinks, so if they're able to keep the ball on the ground, they will. But I mean, Indiana's actually pretty good against the rush. Anytime they're not playing a really good rushing team, they've been good. So there's a chance they stay sturdy here. They're 15th in the country in rushing PPA. That's top 15, man. That's pretty good. So yeah, I can make a case for either of those guys. The weather does really scare me, but in tournaments, I'm not really sure anybody's getting there. I will certainly have a few flyers. All right. Game number 3. Illinois is playing Michigan with an over-under of 41.5. The total set at 17.5. Illinois, it's really this simple, Kevin. Is it a Chase Brown week or is it not?
Not for me. So he's been great all year, but he's playing. I think he's banged up. He got hurt a little bit last week, and he's playing a really good Michigan run D. So he won't be in the cards for me. It's just way too expensive for that matchup. They can't throw the ball, so Michigan's just going to stack the box, and I'm not playing him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to call it a fun matchup, but Chase Brown is first in the country in rushing yards, first in the country in rush attempts. He has 280 rushing attempts. They are just feeding him, so you have to mention him. They do use him in the pass game, and he's a good player, of course. That being said, Michigan ranks number one in points allowed per game. They only allowing 11 points per game. This is good defense. They're also happen to be first in the entire country in rushing defense, 72 yards per game. So absolutely terrible matchup, but they're going to run the ball a ton. This one's going to be ugly. Of course, he could get there, but his price is pretty egregious and just overall not all that interesting, especially on a slate where there's a few running backs priced like below 4K that we really like. There's some in the 7K we like. Kendra Miller's in the 6K. So really good options, so tough to get there. All right, looking at Michigan. Last week, Michigan was 0 for 4 on pass attempts, 20 or more yards downfield. All the talk was about switching to J.J. McCarthy because he's more dynamic and throws a better deep ball. And looks like they're pretty much just the exact same team they were last year. Illinois, pretty good defense, but Michigan's been dominant. So what are we thinking, Kevin?
Well, the problem with McCarthy is even if he does throw the deep ball, it's supposed to be like almost 19-mile-an-hour winds there again. So the Midwest is getting hammered with the wind. So I don't think you can play McCarthy. Honestly, we already don't play Michigan wide receivers, so that just leaves Blake Corum. Blake Corum's been a stud all year. I don't really want to pay that price for him against a pretty good Illinois defense. So he'll probably get 100, 2 touchdowns. But I don't think he has a monster game. I think his ceiling is capped a little bit in this matchup. So I'm probably going to fade him. I love him, but I'm probably not going to play him.
Yeah, I've been playing Blake Corum every week pretty much since the season began. He's 8.5K. That's hard for me to get there. I'm not saying I'm not going to play him, but it's just pretty evident he's their entire offense, that nothing has really changed. The weather this week is so nasty across these games, though, man. Yeah, 25 degrees in this one, 19-mile-an-hour winds. That's tough, but, I mean, Corum could have 35 carries. I mean, it just flat out could happen. But Illinois is a really tough matchup. Second nationally in rushing success rate. Yeah, that's good. Even though Michigan's second offensively in rushing success rate, the clock is going to be running, as are the teams. Donovan Edwards, trust him a little bit last week, Kevin. He got 2 carries. I told you. I think I said if I play Donovan Edwards, he gets 12 points. If I don't, he gets 26. How about he gets 12 points divided by 12? Holy schmoly. Not good. All right, let's flip the page to, man, they just got some great Big Ten matchups here. The weather's cold, so they got all these great ones. Wisconsin playing your boys, Nebraska. Wisconsin's 12.5-point favorites. That tells you about all you need to know about Nebraska right now. Over under 38.5. Oh my goodness. Nebraska pretty much boils down to, are we playing Braylon Allen this week, Kevin?
Yeah, I think you definitely are. Again, not that it matters because neither team can throw the ball, but it's going to be windy and cold and nasty there also. So why not feed Braylon Allen 30 carries against a really, really bad Nebraska rush D? So, and he's only 7K. It really good price. Like I'd much rather pay 7K for Braylon Allen than 8.5 for Corum. So yeah, I definitely have some Braylon Allen exposure.
It's been a weird year for Braylon Allen, Kevin, because, I mean, first off, he's fantastic. Okay, there's too much negativity out there, and maybe I just need to totally purge the Twitter accounts I follow, so I need to get better takes on there, but so much negativity coming off where he has 5 fantasy points against Iowa in a very tough matchup when he was banged up. Now he's getting a healthier, great matchup against Nebraska, 122nd rushing success rate is Nebraska. This could be a Braylon Allen week. Like, he's been good this year, but again, not a lot of pop-off games. He has 1 game with more than 30 fantasy points. So he's kind of steadily getting you the 20 fantasy points. He's at 7K flat. Yeah, I think it might be a Braylon Allen week. I really wish he would catch passes, but that's okay. Also, Ches Malusi sounds like he's coming back this week. Most likely, he's been practicing. I guess I would call him probable, and he's 3K in a fantastic matchup. So I think that does hurt Allen a little bit, even though he is still the clear alpha. But if there's any chance that injury is lingering, which I don't think there is, he had 17 carries a week ago. But if there's any chance, and there's really not very many good min-priced guys anymore, Kevin. We had him for the first half of the season. They've kind of dried up. So I think he's okay. All right, Nebraska. Tell me about the Nebraska stack.
No reason to play any of them again, just like last week. Chuba Purdy's hurt, which he stinks. I mean, he's awful. So Casey Thompson, who knows if he's going to play. And really doesn't matter. Anthony Grant's not going to. It's hard to run the ball when you can't throw the ball at all. And Trey Palmer's dead because he's dead. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's no point in playing any Nebraska
At this
guys.
point, I'm just kind of doubting Casey Thompson's coming back. If he does,
Yeah.
that's actually decent news because Trey Palmer's the cheapest he's been all season, and he gets peppered with targets, and he's very fast. So of course he could be a tournament play, but their backup quarterbacks are so bad throwing the ball, and I think that's what they're going to have again this week. I mean, it's bad. I'm someone who tries to put every game on the television, and I'd way rather watch Mac than Nebraska's backup quarterbacks. All right, so flipping it over, Washington State, Arizona. This could be a really sneaky one on the slate. I'm really interested in this game, so curious to get your thoughts. Washington State's pretty damn good season for Washington State. They're just a solid football team, a little different than a lot of people thought going into the year, but just solid. Arizona, fresh off upset victory over UCLA in a game they didn't even play that great, and they still got the upset win. That was a big win for Arizona. Kudos to them, and they can still reach bowl eligibility. They're playing at home. This is a good game. Over under 63. So it could be a good fantasy. Where are we looking, Kevin?
Washington State. So it's weird with them. So you think that they're run and shoot and throw it all over the place, right? And they just haven't really done that a ton, especially the last few games. They've been running the ball a lot. And Nakia Watson has 2 monster games. He just had a huge game last week, and he's 3.8. Honestly, he's one of the guys you talked about under 4K. He's probably price adjusted. He's probably the best play on the slate. It's really hard not to play him. Arizona's rush D is terrible. So there's no reason to think he's not going to have a huge game. He'll be very highly owned in tournaments. And I think it's one of the times where you eat the chalk and move on.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite play. Certainly my favorite pay down option.
Yep.
I've been fading Arizona's defense whenever I can on whatever website I can, however, all season, and I don't see a reason for stopping now. They are so bad. 131st, dead last in rushing success rate, 129th in rushing EPA. Yeah, I get Washington State hasn't ran the ball a lot this year. They're 130th, second to last in rush rate, but Kevin mentioned it. I mean, the air raid had the coup grade. They've gotten away from it a little bit in recent weeks, and Nakia Watson's been absolutely fantastic. This guy had 40 fantasy points, almost lost me my playoff matchup in the 50-team CFF league a week ago, but luckily didn't. Cam Ward at 6.8K. He hasn't been very good, but they do throw the ball a lot. And again, I will play anybody with a pulse against Arizona. So I'll consider Cam Ward, of course. The issue is their stacking options. They've just spread the ball around the yard so much. Sounds like Bernard Bell's coming back. I really liked him going into the year. He's had some really big games, and he's cheap. The issue is who knows how much he's going to play after, missing more than a month. And then, of course, their other wide receiver who's been interesting, Farrell. Let me find him. Farrell at 4.8K. He was knocked out of the game last week, was on the sideline in street clothes. Sounds like they're not sure if he's going to play or not. Last I saw, he was not practicing. They said they're going to try to get him out there. So DeJon Stribling's the best wide receiver on the team, but he's just not getting any targets, man. So could be a blow-up spot at 6K. Anyone you're interested in the wide receiver room, Kevin?
No, that they just throw to too many different guys, and there's nobody that's gonna I don't even really think any of them have any real upside because they just throw to so many different guys. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Really hard to predict. You could take a flyer in tournaments. Like I think Arizona's defense is that bad.
Honestly, I think you could play both running backs for Washington State because Jenkins returned last week. He's a really good kid. Looks really good. And he's a cheap price. Interestingly, he's actually more than Nakia Watson, which I don't really understand. But that said, I think in a tournament play, you could play both running backs here, and both can go over 100 yards and get a couple scores for really cheap price against, like we said, a terrible Arizona rush D. So I'd rather actually do that than play any of the Washington State receivers.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hate that. That's probably extremely low owned in tournaments and the best matchup you can possibly get in the country. Okay. Washington State actually been very solid defensively. Arizona's been really good offensively. They're top 20 in just about everything I have here. And even their Wiley, their running back, even he went off last week in that big win against UCLA. That being said, they're priced kind of to the moon here, Kevin. So what are we interested in for the Wildcats?
They're too rich for my blood. Like you said, Washington State actually has been really good defensively. So I just don't want to pay the price for any of these guys against Washington State. So I know it's a high over under, and obviously Arizona is going to score points, but it's hard for me to get there based on price. So I probably am not going to have much Arizona exposure, honestly.
Yeah, this is kind of caveman brain, but Arizona and Jaden Delore in particular, they run hot and cold, okay? And Delore has a great game and then a really bad game. Great game and then a really bad game. And he had a pretty dang good game in an upset win, averaged 11 yards per attempt against UCLA. I could see him laying an egg against a very underrated Washington State defense. So overall, I'm not super interested. I will say the wide receivers, Dorian Singer at 6.7K, Jacob Cowing at 7.6, and then McMillan at 6K. These guys are all fine. I guess since McMillan's the cheapest and he's 6'4", or I think 6'5", and he's a freak and he can catch a lot of touchdowns. I don't mind them as a one-off, but yeah, overall, not the most interesting team for me, even though, again, I think this game, I think there's definitely a chance this one's played in the 40s. Like if you're game stacking, I think that one could go crazy. I think there's definitely a chance. Okay. Kansas State's playing West Virginia. Kansas State is absolutely rolling. West Virginia, not so much. What are we thinking here in this one, Kevin?
I think obviously the main target for Kansas State is Deuce. Deuce is a stud, great fantasy player. Obviously runs and catches. So West Virginia likely will have no answer for him. He's 7.4, really good price. Again, it's I'd much rather have him than Corum for 85. So it's that type of thing where I'd rather pay down a little bit and get Deuce Vaughn. Like I said, he should. And the good thing about Deuce Vaughn this week again is Adrian Martinez is out, not playing, so that helps Deuce Vaughn. He doesn't get those vulture touchdowns by the quarterback. Will Howard doesn't run nearly as much as Adrian Martinez does. So I think that really helps Deuce Vaughn. That said, I don't mind Will Howard either at 6.4.
Yes.
He's been pretty good, right? So I don't mind him at all at 6.4. So those are the two options with, Deuce being the preferred option, but you could certainly play Will Howard.
I think you put it very well. West Virginia's defense, I've been saying all year, they're terrible. Okay, Oklahoma couldn't get the job done last week. I think I'm just going to chalk that one up to there being pretty bad weather. Weather's not great. It's cold, 33 degrees, but it's supposed to be sunny out, winds of 12 miles per hour. I think their defense stinks, and I think Kansas State is just genuinely a really good football team. I think Deuce Vaughn is fantastic if you're playing cash. Really difficult to get away from Deuce Vaughn. I think he's my favorite cash game play. Him and Watson is probably where you start your cash. Will Howard in tournaments, I agree. I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. West Virginia's defense stinks, in particular their secondary. So I get they held down Oklahoma last week, whatever. Who cares? They've been terrible, and we have a whole game sample size. So I'm not believing in one game fluke and bad weather. All right, flipping it over to the other side, we have West Virginia, JT Daniels. Wow, what a guy. Looks like he's lost his job probably to Green. They listed JT Daniels first on the depth chart, but I don't think anyone's believing it because Green had a hell of a game. Kansas State, good defense. Is there a chance we can get to Green or some of the other options, Kevin?
Probably not for the price. It's just not, again, I don't think it's worth it against the good Kansas State defense. But when you look at Garrett Green, the kid looked great last week. Why are they waiting? Why was JT Daniels playing this the whole time? He stinks. That said, for his price, I'd rather have Howard. I'd rather have a guy we're going to talk about later for ECU. So there's a couple other guys lower price that I'd rather have. So I probably won't play any West Virginia.
Yeah. I could see playing Green in tournaments because this kid, 100 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in your first meaningful playing time. That's intriguing. And there's a chance, the other team doesn't really have a full book on you and you're playing at home. I certainly don't hate it, but at this point, he's more of a runner. That kind of has me off his other receiving options. Caden Prather is just a very talented kid, but he hasn't gotten the job done because the offense has been so bad. Running the ball, Kansas State just absolutely shut down Baylor. Is West Virginia really going to run the ball? Probably not. Mathis had 23 carries, and he's super cheap. I guess he could get there, I guess. Really not my favorite plays, but that's where I'd be looking personally as a one-off. All right, Houston, West Virginia. This is going to be an interesting one for DFS purposes. Over-unders all the way up at 67.5. It's up to 68.5 in some places. East Carolina's a 6-point favorite. Houston, like, what is going on in Houston, Kevin? Why are they so bad?
I don't know, but their defense is abysmal. Their pass defense is it's atrocious. I don't know what Dana's doing. I don't think Dana knows what he's doing either. So it's really bad. So I think this is my favorite game on the slate. I'll have a lot of exposure on both sides. So for Houston, Tune past 3 games has just been an animal. He's throwing the ball all over the place. He's running. So I really like Tune 8.1. I think it's a great price. ECU's rush D is actually really good. Their pass D is not so good. So Tune should light them up. Should have another big game. I don't mind. I like Snead a little bit at running back at 3.8, even though ECU rush D is good. He's been really good. He's definitely taken the job from Brandon Campbell. And he's been pretty good receiving too. He's been catching a lot of passes out of the backfield. So 3.8, it's a pretty good price. It's not, like I said, it's not a great matchup, but it's a pretty good price. So I can see some Snead. And then if you're playing Tune, I think you have to stack him with Tank Dell. Tank Dell has been a beast. He's very expensive, highest price receiver on the board, 8.2, but look at his numbers. He's just been a monster. So I think that's a great stack. And then my other play, who I also like a lot, he's 4.2, is Samuel Brown. He's been really, really good over the past 4 or 5 weeks. And at 4.2 in a game where there should be a ton of points and a lot of passing yards, I think he's a really nice option. I think he's going to be lower owned. So, he's a nice stack option. If you choose not to stack with Dell, you could certainly stack with Samuel Brown.
Yeah, Brown, again, the pay down options are not great elsewhere other than some of the running backs. And yeah, I think Brown's probably my favorite pay down other than Watson. He's been really consistent in Houston. Like at this point, I mean, I've made fun of Dana Holgorsen enough. So you guys already know how I feel most likely. If you're just tuning in, I think he's a clown show. I've been saying it for years. It's a clown show. What's going on there? The thing is, they still have enough talent that the offense is still clicking. So then the defense was really good last year. Like they were freaking solid at all levels. Had some NFL players and everything. I loved watching that Houston team. And for them to completely fall apart like this, he just caught lightning in a bottle. He got lucky. It's bad. It's bad defensively. This should be another shootout. You can't really rely on either one of these teams is the thing. You can't really rely on either one of these quarterbacks, but I don't see how it doesn't shoot out with how badly Houston's defense has been playing. So yeah, I think Sam Brown's my favorite at 4.2K. Tank Dell, of course you can pay up for Tank Dell. Okay. He's all the way up there. Why not? I guess it's just the issue of whether or not you're going to play him or you're going to play Corum or Chase Brown. I think I'd still rather go Corum, but that's really a question mark for me. Okay. And Clayton Tune is absolutely fine. So then this kind of becomes the thing with like the SMU USF game last week, where it's like, hey, it's a great fantasy game, but how many of these players are you really going to play when you have 14 games you can choose from? I think I like this one more than I liked that one last week, because that one was just such an easy victory for SMU because USF stinks. Okay. And Houston might stink, but like I said, they still have way more talent. Okay. And their coach is technically still there and USF's is not. ECU's defense is fairly easy to read in that, yes, Kevin, they are very good against the rush, 17th in PPA against the rush, and they're terrible against the pass, 101st against the pass. So it's kind of night and day. I really like the passing options there. Of course, Stacey Snead, you have to mention him because he has 3 straight 20-point fantasy games and had 30 against Temple. My issue is looking at these defenses. USF is arguably the worst defense in the country. They're right up there with Arizona. Temple's a joke of a program. They gave up a 70 burger when they played UCF. And then that SMU game, I mean, it turned into a shootout. That's a weird game. That's not going to happen, right? When are you going to see 77 points? So my issue is it is a little fluky, but all those issues are kind of secondary when you're talking about a starting running back who's been very productive in a 3-point K price in a game that should be a shootout. So hopefully I didn't spend too long talking about that, but I think this game is extremely important on the slates. All right, flipping the page over to ECU. Big news is, of course, Keaton Mitchell got knocked out of last week's game. He's been absolutely fantastic. No update on his health. We're recording the show on a Wednesday, a day earlier than usual, so make sure you stay tuned to that. And then, of course, anyone in the passing game is in play here against this terrible Houston defense. Kevin, tell me about your favorite plays on this side.
Yeah, definitely Holton Ahlers. The guy's been there for 12 years, and I think he's due for a couple final shootouts, and this is going to be one of them. So 6.2 is way too cheap. As you know, we see what Houston's past D does, so he's just way too cheap. I think he's a core play this week, and honestly, I think you can stack both his receivers, right? So Whitehead, or where is he? Sorry,
Winstead, 7K.
Yeah, Winstead at 7K. It's actually, he's more the possession guy, and he hasn't been great the past couple games, but he could have a monster. So 7K I'm fine with. And then CJ Johnson is the more explosive guy at 6.62. Could have a 40, could go off. So I think you can stack Ahlers with either one. I think you can stack Ahlers with both of them if you really want to go nuts. Because I don't see any reason he doesn't throw for 403 or 4. So,
yeah, I absolutely agree. And of course, this game's going to be the mush, but like you can do mush and then get different elsewhere, right? Okay, it's a 14-game slate. There's plenty of chances to get different. Ahlers at 6.2 is a fantastic option in all formats. I like that he rushes a little bit. That in my opinion, means he's finding cash to a consistent player. This offense has been really good. I like this team. Okay. And this is a fantastic matchup. So I think that makes him fine. This is his senior day. They did mention, so my one thing on the ECU side is I have concern for their top 3 players, in my opinion, health-wise. I don't know if Mitchell's going to play. If he does, he'll be in some of my lineups. Allers hurt his back last week, okay? And apparently he's been dealing with an injured shoulder all year. They said it's just pops out. So he's just dealing, and sometimes his shoulder pops out like mid-game or mid-throw. And that would kind of explain to me why his fantasy points have been decreased. They said that's been happening since the NC State game. That was the first week of the season. That being said, he's been kind of effective no matter what. And it's a great matchup. CJ Johnson, I was about to say he was my favorite tournament wide receiver play on the slate. If you didn't see his touchdown last week against Cincinnati, go watch it. He's just a man amongst boys at this point. He's always had potential. He just hasn't capitalized on it. He finally is. That being said, he was slammed kind of on his head at the end of that game against Cincinnati. He was actually stretchered off the field, which really has me concerned. The coach's quotes have been pretty positive. It sounds like they kind of expect him to play, but anytime you're stretchered off just a week ago, that has me concerned, of course, whether or not you're going to be full health. In the event he doesn't play, again, I'm kind of expecting him to. It's only Wednesday, so stay tuned for news. Yeah, I think Winstead is a fantastic playing cash, and you mentioned it. This guy's been peppered with targets all season. He's playing a terrible defense. He could go absolutely off. So, yeah, if Keaton Mitchell is indeed out, you have the backup Marlon Gunn. This guy did not look good last week, okay, but he got 11 carries, was still somewhat productive, and it's a great matchup. So I could see playing Marlon Gunn. All right, moving on from that game to Boston College versus Notre Dame, over under 43.5. Oh, boy. Boston College, they're on a winning streak, baby. They beat NC State. Notre Dame didn't look very good against Navy last week. Had 12 yards in the second half. Oh, boy. But luckily they still won. Had a good first half. Anything on Boston College for you? It's a Phil Jerkovic revenge game, but it sounds like he's probably not going to play.
Yeah, honestly, it called me crazy, but I actually do like I like a BC stack here a little bit for quarterback wide receiver. Yeah. Moorhead actually has been pretty good his last 2 starts. He threw for 330 yards against a good NC State defense. I think the NC State defense is on par with the Notre Dame defense. So I don't see any reason why it's at 6.1. He can't throw another 25, 28 point DraftKings point week out there. And he's going to be he's going to be way low owned in tournaments. Nobody's going to play him. It's not a great matchup, but I don't mind it. And then stack him with Zay Flowers, who's 6.9, who has been really good all year, but especially the past couple of weeks with Moorhead in there. He's a stud. He's a really good receiver. And I think that's an underrated stack that in tournaments is not going to be highly owned. So I don't mind that.
I don't mind it either. And I hate it. I hate it. But somehow I don't mind it. I don't mind it. It's like you would think hate is stronger than minding, but somehow I don't know. Yeah, Moorhead, look. He had 4 turnover-worthy plays last week, okay? PFF graded him on the 50s, okay? So I don't even know if he's any good. but he's throwing the ball 45 times a game. Why? Because Boston College has no offensive line. They cannot run the ball at all. At all. I think Garwell had negative rushing yards last week. So, yeah, they're not going to run the ball against Notre Dame. Of course, he could huck it all over the yard. So I would say stay tuned in the weather in this one, updated to a kick. I'll let Kevin, you check that while I talk about these guys real quick. And then Zay Flowers, he broke the Boston College all-time receiving yards record last week. This guy's an explosive player in a game where he could see 15 targets. I absolutely think you're not crazy for that call.
Yeah, I don't love the wind, like 17.5-mile-an-hour winds, and don't love it. So that puts a damper on it a little bit. But again, if you're rolling in a tournament, I think it's all right.
Yeah, just acknowledge it's a little crazy, but
yeah.
I think there's definitely a path. Okay, Notre Dame. I was messaging you. We missed the Drew Pine stack at halftime against Navy, and then he did nothing, but he still had 30 fantasy points. That's because Navy can't defend anything. It's basically what, Meyer or Estime? Are we playing them this week?
I'm probably not going to. I wanted to play Estime, and then they're back to sharing all the carries, so I'm probably not going to play. It's just too volatile for me.
It seems like there's not really a rhyme or reason to what they do.
No.
And that's been the case with this team all season, even dating back to the Marshall loss. I remember calling it out. Like Isaiah Foskey, their best defender, they're like rotating him snaps. Like they don't think they can lose the game. It was a one-score game, and they're playing the backups and hardly playing their guys. It's not injury related. They're rotating their running backs constantly. There's no rhyme or reason to what they do. Okay, young coaching staff, I don't really think they know what they're doing. Boston College's defense is better than people expect, and this one's ugly in the wind. So you can always play Meyer, and Estime could get 20 points, but it's not my favorite look whatsoever. All right, flipping the page over to Georgia, 22.5-point favorite against Kentucky. This one's really old, and we don't really like playing Georgia or Kentucky guys. So I guess we'll keep it simple and just say any Georgia players you're interested in.
No, because I get Brock Bowers wrong every time, so I'm just going to stay away.
Lad McConkey, touchdown in 3 straight weeks.
Yeah, I can't buy it, though, because you play him, and then he's going to have 3 for 17. So it's just not there for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game's that simple. We're not playing – Kentucky's terrible, man. Yeah. They couldn't move the ball against Vanderbilt. Will Levis. I don't even see the need to make fun of Will Levis and the analysts that – it's not fun to me. It's just obvious. There's nothing to talk about. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess Bowers or McConkey if you really want to. But I think the price on Bowers is probably my preferred option, if anything. He's always liable to blow up, and he's always liable to get 3 points because the games are too easy for them. And nothing really matters until they get to the playoffs. Okay, Texas is playing Kansas. I think I asked if the Big 12 was back. I feel like I asked that every week. And then Texas didn't score an offensive touchdown. So definitive answer, Big 12's not back. But it can always be back in Kansas games because they play absolutely no defense, Kevin. Yeah. One of the worst in the entire country. They have no defensive line. They don't tackle. They don't cover. Well, they cover the spread, but they don't cover receivers. So where are we looking at on Texas?
I just don't. I don't want to play Ewers. I just don't want to. He's looks so bad, and his price. It's not a horrible price, but he just doesn't do anything, and I don't understand why. So even against Kansas, I have a hard time playing him. Xavier Worthy, he runs wide open, and they can't get him the ball. So
Ewers stinks.
Yeah, he stinks, and I want to play Worthy, but man. It's hard to. That said, Worthy could have 4 for 150 and 2 because he could take two deep ones to the house. So I don't know how to attack this game because I don't really want to play yours. Like I said, I would love to play Bijan. The problem is, and this is just speculation on my part, how much there's nothing to play for. They're done. How much is he gonna? Are they going to pound him? How much is he even going to play? How much does he want to play? Love him, and I think he's, I think he's a great player. I'm just afraid of. I don't know. It's kind of uncertain for me, so I don't think I want to pay that price for him.
That's a great call. You have to look at these things this time of year, and the fact of the matter is, He's playing for an 11-10 head coach. Steve Sarkisian's 11-10 at Texas. They just scored 0 offensive touchdowns. Why would Bijan say yes to getting 30 touches in a game against Kansas? Right. He shouldn't. He shouldn't play. Texas stinks. The program stinks. He shouldn't be at Texas. That being said, neither should Xavier Worthy. Sounds like he's going to transfer in the offseason. He should get out of there. That being said, this is totally a week where Texas bounces back, okay, because they're playing Kansas, who can't do anything. So this is totally a week where Quinn Ewers just decides to toss 5 touchdowns because guys are wide open, and then some idiots on Twitter say Quinn Ewers is QB1 because he's definitely better than Drake May and definitely better than Bryce Young, right?
Yeah.
That being said, yeah, it's a joke. That being said, Xavier Worthy, yeah, he's always liable to pop off. I'm sick of him running wide open and not getting the ball, but he's always liable to pop off. Jordan Whittington's not really my favorite as their secondary option. And Jatavian Sanders has been too cheap all year. And Quinn Ewers kind of has a love affair with Jatavian Sanders, likes him way more than Xavier Worthy. So not sure. Somebody give us the reporting details on why that's the case. Okay, Kansas. Texas's defense is pretty good. They've really shown some vulnerabilities lately, but I mean, they're pretty good. Way better against the rush than the pass. And Kansas has been a lot better rushing than passing lately. Jalen Daniels sounds like he could be coming back soon. It's late in the year, and they said he's still not 100%, so kind of difficult to read. As of right now, I'd assume Bean's the starter, but nothing confident. Stay tuned for news on that one. Kevin, do you remember when Jalen Daniels was a Heisman contender?
Absolutely. Yep. And actually, honestly, I think Bean's been better, but I want to play Devin Neal because they're finally feeding him, but Texas run D is really good. If Devin Neal doesn't break a long one, like if Kendre Miller didn't break a long one last week, Kendre Miller would not have had a very good game. So the same thing, I think it's the same thing with Devin Neal. If he doesn't break a long one, I don't know that he's going to have a very good game. So it's hard to get there with Kansas, and I don't play any of their receivers because they throw to too many guys. So there's another game where there's going to be points scored, but I'm having a hard time finding out where they're going to come from.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in playing Kansas here. I think unless the Texas quit factor's there, which I'm not sure it is there yet. Like, I mean, they've been playing pretty hard and they've been playing pretty good defense. It's like Devin Neal's had pretty good blow up spots against terrible defenses. And Jason Bean, I guess I could get there in tournaments if he does start in D, because this guy is always liable to break off a 75-yard rush. But for no Kansas really for me, unless it's a tournament one-off. All right, looking at the next game here, extremely ugly one. Miami's playing against Clemson. Miami's ugly to start with, and then Tyler Van Dyke missed last game. Henry Parrish missed last game. I've seen no definitive update on either ones of their status, so check that out. They kind of go to a wildcat offense, basically, with Ja'Curry Brown because he's a rush-first quarterback. So keep an eye out for that. That kind of changes their game plan. And then if Henry Parrish is out, it looks like Jalen Knightland's going to be the clear leader of what's still, I guess we could call a committee approach. And then Donald Chaney looks like he might come back from injury. All this is probably wasting words, right, Kevin? Because we're not playing them.
No, we're not playing any Hurricane. No Miami guys this week. Clemson, obviously, they're not the defense they usually are. However, they're more than adequate at home to destroy a Miami team, and I don't see Miami really moving the football. So
style points.
Yep.
Style points. There'd be nothing more hilarious than Clemson falling apart because I don't think Clemson's very good. And I think they're volatile because their quarterback is haywire, but this is such an easy matchup. With it being that easy of a matchup and Will Shipley only being 6.5K, DJU, he is erratic, but he's only 7K and he does run the ball a lot and he's a large human being. Antonio Williams, pretty cheap. He's a clear wide receiver 1 now that Bo Collins is out. What are we thinking?
Yeah, they all have, like you said, they're all good matchups. They're all good prices. It's just hard. I get burned every time I play Clemson guys, so I try to stay away. I never get Shipley right. When I play him, he gets a 15. When I don't play him, he has a 35. So it's tough. Honestly, if I was going to play anyone, Williams is probably my favorite play at wide out, just because he is coming on. He gets a lot of targets. But I have a hard time playing Clemson guys.
Yeah, I really liked Williams in the afternoon slate. He was very good for me there. And I just thought that was an easier handicap. Like, people aren't going to realize he's going to see an uptick in carries. I think he's better than a lot of people realize. And they're playing a Louisville team that's good against the rush and terrible against, I don't know if they're terrible against pass, but it's very clear that that should be a pass funnel game for Clemson. in this spot. Miami's pretty good against the rush. They're a bad team in general. I think Shipley's the way you would look. I think that's a really good price on Shipley. All right, NC State going against Louisville. Man, the ACC is just kind of a mess this year. NC State's 3.5-point dogs. They lost to Boston College last week. So I don't know if we should just bury them or whether we should say this is, I mean, they can't do worse than last week. Okay, and then Louisville just kind of had their dreams crushed against Clemson, and now who knows if Cunningham's going to play. Already had an injured, taped-up hand. Then he injured his throwing shoulder. This one's a mess, Kevin. Any interest?
No, complete mess. No reason to play anybody from either side, honestly. Possibly, well, again, I don't know if Cunningham's playing. So Hudson's been good, but 6.8 is way too expensive. So, nope. I'll pass.
Yeah, I think both defenses are underrated. I think both defenses are really good at stopping the rush, so no interest there for me. The way I'd be looking is possibly MJ Morris. It's hard because he hasn't even thrown more than 30 passes in a game, okay? And he runs the ball a lot, but hasn't been doing it well. But at 5.7K, that's a really good price, again, against a Louisville team. That's kind of a pass funnel team, 83rd in passing explosiveness. NC State's not very explosive, but, he could throw 3 touchdowns and then run for another. It wouldn't be all that surprising, or, throw for 2, run for 1, whatever. So MJ Morris maybe. Cunningham, obviously you have to stay tuned at 7.3. That's a fantastic price for him. But seeing how he looked last week, he couldn't do anything out there even before he injured his throwing shoulder. Like, his hand was taped up and he was just clearly affected. So unless he's got some sort of miracle drugs pumping through him, not really for me. Maybe in a tournament, because he's always liable for 40 points in any matchup. Okay, flipping the page to Ohio State, Maryland. Man, there's some ugly games on the slate this week. This one, not necessarily one of them. I mean, it'll get ugly, okay? 27.5 points. I wrote that wrong. Apparently, Maryland's favored by 27.5. Everyone go run to the betting window right now. I don't know if JSN's worth that many points. Ignore that ticker. I'm hiding it. Actually, bring it back real quick. Over under 63.5. Kevin, tell me about Ohio State.
They are what they are, right? There's potential where Stroud throws for 5 touchdowns again this week. 9.6 is a really high price, though. It's tough to get there. Honestly, the play I really loved at running back was Hayden, the freshman, but it looks like I think Trayvon's going to play. So if he does, obviously Hayden is a no play. But if somehow both him and Meatball are out, Hayden is a phenomenal play. So again, it's one thing's probably have to wait till tomorrow's practice to see what's going on there. But we do expect Trayvon to play. So then, that said, if Trayvon plays, I'm not playing him because he hasn't been good. He gets dinged up all the time this year. So I won't get there. I really want both of them to be out so I can play Hayden, but we'll see. Receiver wise, obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is a stud, best receiver in college football, probably going to be the best receiver in the NFL in 2 years, 3 years. So love the play. He gets a ton of targets, and nobody can cover him. So there's nobody on Maryland that's going to cover him. So you want to play Harrison Jr. and stack him, go for it. It's an expensive stack, obviously, but you can make it work. So I don't really like Ibuka at his price. He's been down. He hasn't really done much the past 3 weeks. So I'm probably not going to get there. The only, obviously, Smith and Jigba, he's not playing, right? Even if he's questionable, he's not playing. I don't think he plays
football.
Yeah,
Jackson Smith and Jigba football.
Yeah. So it's really Harrison for me. I just don't know. I want to see what happens with the running back situation.
Yeah, well said. I mean, just monitor news. There's nothing definitive at this time, and I know you probably hate hearing that, but that's college fantasy football is. You have to monitor the news until kickoff. That's annoying, but if you're going to play, you have to do it. Yeah, Mayan Williams, he went off on the cart.
It didn't look good.
Week. Did not look good, and they're saying he could play this week. He could, Kevin, but I think if he does, he's not going to get a lot of work. So I'm kind of hoping he's announced out to just clear up this room, right? Because even if he is not 100%, he could still siphon off like a goal line touchdown or 2, right? Or 3 or 4. Travion Henderson at 6.3. I would consider him if he plays this week. I agree. They're probably going to limit his usage. He's been dealing with the same foot injury all year. So it sounds like he could have played last week. Why? Because he's already played on it twice. Okay. They played him in their tougher matchups, Iowa, Penn State. I don't know if they should get overconfident in this spot. And maybe I'm being ridiculous and overthinking this because Maryland just lost to Penn State 30-0. Okay. And we've seen Ohio State already beat Penn State, although that game was close. That being said, you never know what you're going to get. Okay. This one's on the road. If you just opt to sit your 2 running backs that could possibly play, you're just trying to save them for the playoffs. Like Maryland at least kind of made it a game when they played Michigan. Like they have enough talent. I know they've been playing terrible but they have enough talent that if they play a good game, there's a turnover or 2. Like this one could be a game. In Ohio State, they've had numerous games where they're just hanging around. Like they hung around with Northwestern. Give me a break. So I don't know, but those guys are both announced out. I agree. I think Hayden's fantastic. And Hayden might be fantastic either way if they're both dinged up and they just run all over this team, right? So Maryland's been better on defense, but their weakness is still the rush. 76th in my rushing grade. All right, flipping it over to Maryland. They've been bad, Kevin. Can we skip them?
Yeah.
What's there to talk about?
I can skip them for sure. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. They spread the ball too much. Haven't been good. Tough matchup. That's a nice bowl of soup. Okay. Penn State playing Rutgers. Rutgers always confuses me, Kevin, because they have a pretty good defense, and that makes me not want to play teams against them. On the other hand, they're a really bad football team. I don't know if I want to say really bad. They're a bad football team that can lose by a lot in any matchup. And anytime you can lose by a lot in any matchup, that means your opponent's scoring points and has the ball a lot. Penn State's been pretty good lately. What are we thinking about Penn State?
The only interest I have would be in the running game, and I got that wrong last week because last week I thought it would be the Katron Allen show. He still had like 17 carries. He just didn't score. Again, instead it was a Singleton show. So pick your poison. Who do you want to play? I don't know. I'm to the point where I don't know who to play between those two.
Flip a coin.
Yeah. So, So that's it.
I think I prefer Allen in cash and Singleton in tournaments. That being said, I don't think I'm playing them this week. I didn't play either last week. I'm not going to play either this week because flip a coin. Rutgers is better against the rush than people think. Even though their numbers aren't good, they're fine. They're okay. They don't stink. But you can play them. Of course you can play them. Either one could have 3 touchdowns. They're very, very, very good freshman running backs. Wide receivers, if you want to play them, you can. We've talked about these wide receivers enough this year, Kevin, and they're just not interesting. Parker Washington should get more targets than he does, but he doesn't, and Sean Clifford is extremely erratic at quarterback. So you can play Clifford if you want. I won't be personally. All right, flipping the page to Rutgers. We're going to close this one out with Kevin regaling us on the Gavin Wimsatt to Aaron Cruikshank stack.
Yeah, I wish I could find something here, but again, it's Rutgers, not a very good team, playing a really good Penn State defense. They might score possibly.
Yeah, that offense is bad, man. I was trying to watch a little bit of Wimsatt because, right, he's supposed to be like their big recruit and he's a dual threat. I thought he might be interesting, and I can't watch it. It's so bad. It hurts my eyes. So hopefully he shows me something this week because he hasn't. All right. Oh my gosh. We might go under an hour. What happened? There were just too many ugly games this week. How did we go under an hour?
There's a lot of ugly games.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. The pricing, like I said, Kevin, it's pretty good in some spots. They've gotten a lot better at most of the quarterbacks. They've gotten a lot better at not having these dirt cheap wide receivers. That being said, there's, I don't know. We mentioned probably 3 to 4 cheap options we really like, depending on injury news, maybe a little more than that. And then it's just finding the right pay up options, I think. So is there any pay up option you love? Like, is there anyone you have circled?
I do like Deuce a lot. I do like Braylon Allen a lot. And then at receiver, I love Tank Dell. So those are probably my 3.
Yeah. Good call. Can't argue with any of that. All righty. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Any final thoughts?
No, just try to hit those lineups, hit the lineup construction correctly, and let's bring it home. It's been a rough year, so let's bring it home this week.
Yeah, my advice, Kevin, for everyone, just make the good lineups this week.
Yeah.
Make the winning ones, not the losing ones. Sometimes we make that decision. Don't make that decision this week. We're going to make the winning ones, okay? All right, other than that, thanks for listening as always. Daily Bread Media. If you're not subscribed on Twitter, if you're not subscribed to YouTube, it's Daily Bread Media. I've loved doing these videos every week. If you've been here with the long haul for me, this is year 3. We've been doing these videos first with Daily Bread. It's been fantastic. First year, Kevin helping me out on the show. Kevin's been great helping me out. I really enjoyed it. So other than that, next week, next week's Thanksgiving. So I don't know what the hell we're doing next week, but we'll figure something out. Hopefully we'll be here next week. We'll give you something, even if it's abbreviated on a different day, even if it's just one of us. We'll be back because that's a big week of games. So I'll figure something out for us. But other than that, enjoy your weekend, everybody. The season's almost over. You got to watch all the college football while you still can. Good luck this week. Hopefully we make some money and see you again.